James Baldwin was a writer, social critic and civil rights agitator throughout his life.
When you were starting out as a writer, you were a black, impoverished homosexual. You must have said to yourself, gee, how disadvantaged can I get?
Oh no, I thought I hit the jackpot.
The story Sonny's Blues was written in 1957 and considers the impact of heroin on his community.
I was scared for Sonny. He became real to me again. A great block of ice got settled in my belly and kept melting there slowly all day long while I taught my classes algebra. It was a special kind of ice. It kept melting, sending trickles of ice water all up and down my veins. But it never got less.
Many say heroin was used as a weapon by the state against the growing black civil rights movement.
Sometimes it hardened and seemed to expand until I felt my guts were going to come spilling out, or that I was going to choke or scream.
I don't know whether the labor unions and their bosses really hate me. That doesn't matter, but I know I'm not in their unions. I don't know if the real estate lobby has anything against black people, but I know the real estate lobbies keep me in the ghetto. I don't know if the Board of Education hates black people, but I know the textbooks I give my children to read and the schools that we have to go to. Now, this is the evidence.
These boys now were living as we'd been living then. They were growing up with a rush, and their heads bumped abruptly against the low ceiling of their actual possibilities. They were filled with rage.
Now, you see, in an age of mendacity and criminality, which is our own, just telling the truth and having integrity is revolutionary. It's subversive. It's counter-cultural.
Born in Harlem, New York in 1924, he was the eldest of 9 children.
When I was growing up, I was taught in American history books that Africa had no history, and neither did I. That I was a savage, about whom the less said the better, who had been saved by Europe and brought to America. And of course, I believed it. I didn't have much choice. Those are the only books there were. And it would seem then, of course, that it's an act of God, that this is true, that you belong where white people had put you.
So we drove along toward the vivid killing streets of our childhood. These streets hadn't changed, though housing projects jutted up out of them now like rocks in the middle of a boiling sea. Boys exactly like the boys we once had been found themselves smothering these houses, came down into the streets for light and air, and found themselves encircled by disaster. Some escaped the trap. Most didn't. Those who got out always left something of themselves behind, as some animals amputate a leg and leave it in the trap.
James Baldwin wrote what he wanted to write, popular or unpopular.
I'm going to improvise like a writer on some assumptions. And though I feel a little uneasy in doing this, in saying this, nevertheless, what a writer is obliged at some point to realize is that he's involved in a language which he has to change.
I was yet aware that this was only a moment, that the world waited outside as hungry as a tiger, and that trouble stretched above us, longer than the sky.
The questions presented to the actual and hypothetical writer are really almost unanswerable. Or when you try to answer them, you find yourself involved with another question. That's part of the trouble of being a writer, which is part of the trouble of being a human being. It's actually part of the trouble of being a society, since the society believes in answers and doesn't like questions. But we'll return to that in a moment.